Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Grassroots Fundraising session. Thank you all for attending. My name is Greg Benton, and I'm a board member here at ALD Connect. Our panelists today are all on the forefront of the ALD Grassroots Fundraising movement. First, we'll just have our panelists introduce themselves, and then at the end, we'll have a quick Q&A session with our panelists. So feel free to type in your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as possible toward the end of the session. First, I'd love to start with Chris and Katie Marino, who are with us today. Thank you, guys. So Chris and Katie, can you tell us a bit about your story and how you got involved?
Yeah. We have a couple slides to share. I think it's that one. Yeah, so our story started about 2 years ago. And this is us. You can see Ryan's the blondie and Braden is tan there in that picture. This was probably around 2017 before we knew that Braden had ALD. One of the first things we started noticing was the difference in skin tone, although it didn't strike us as particularly disturbing because he'd always been darker than the rest of us. But towards the summer of 2018, it really was enhanced, and it was almost a bit of a joke within the family because he was so much darker than the rest of us. And you can see here how he compares to his brother Ryan. But flash forward towards the end of 2018 and early 2019, he started having some really strange symptoms of anxiety and behavioral issues that we had really chalked up to nervousness and anxiety. Then he had gotten sick with what we thought was a flu or a stomach bug, and he just didn't recover. We ended up in the ER, and this is a picture of him in the ER that night. You can see how skinny and sick he was. And that's where he was ultimately diagnosed with adrenal insufficiency, and a couple weeks later with ALD. And that ended up leading us to our connection with Dr. Eichler, who actually reached out to us the same day we found out Braden had ALD, and completely changed the trajectory of our story. Because as you can imagine, and families know, when you get a diagnosis like that, you're in a really dark spot around the uncertainty and the unknown. We were able to get an MRI a week later and learned that fortunately Braden, who was 10 at the time, did not have any cerebral disease. And so that first year we spent a lot of time learning about ALD and kind of bringing ourselves up out of that dark space. And that parlayed into us thinking about, well, what can we do? What can we give back to the community? Which led to some of our work fundraising. I'll turn over to you.
So the first thing, so as Katie said, coming out of that darkness, it really began, our engagement with fundraising really started after the ALD conference last November, which was our first ALD conference. We went into that conference, really still in our own heads, and emerged much more educated with a lot more connections, as I'm sure a lot of people on this call I can attest to. That conference was really an incredible experience for us in making connections. So the first thing we had thought out was to have a fundraiser. We wanted to raise money, but we didn't know exactly what that would look like. So this is the original flyer that Katie had put together for a fundraiser that we had all ready to go. We had everything locked in. We had music, a comedy. We had all of it locked into place, and then the pandemic hit, and ultimately that got canceled. So it kind of threw us for a loop, and we decided at that point that perhaps me running the Boston Marathon to help raise awareness would help to drive more of the funds, more awareness, that sort of thing. So the original date of the marathon was actually, that ended up getting bumped. And as a result of that, I ended up deciding I was going to run every street in my town as a way to drive additional awareness. So this is a map of our town. We live in Grafton, Massachusetts, which is about 40 miles west of Boston, Massachusetts. And so this is after our first couple runs that I did. You can see the purple lines. And then this is what it looked like when I was done. And through that process, we were able to gain some traction media-wise and otherwise. So for example, our local paper had Braden on the cover. They did a full-page story on Braden's story and what we were trying to do, again, to try to further raise awareness around the disease, which is ultimately our goal, our main goal. And we also ended up, some of you on the call may have seen, we ended up, a local Boston TV station did a story on Braden and what we were doing as far as the fundraising went. So this is sort of a behind the scenes picture of that. I ended up running a remote or a virtual marathon at the beginning of September. This was sort of my support crew. At the end of that race, socially distanced, obviously. So I ended up running a full marathon around our town. And this is a picture of Braden and I at the end of it, and medal. And I want to show what the net result was of our efforts. So we ended up raising $20,750 that this past week we were able to hand over virtually to Dr. Eichler. And obviously for us, it was the end of, you know, a very busy and turbulent years we're all experiencing, but it was very, very gratifying to be able to do that and to be able to give back, particularly when we reflect on where we began this whole journey. And so we feel like we're emerging in a much better place. And
I'd just add to that, you know, we've been, I know Cassie and Jamie are going to speak, but we've been really influenced by what they've been able to achieve. And our hope going forward is that we're able to pull some additional families together on the East Coast here to do something similar to increase, to continue to raise awareness and funds for research as well, and potentially create a 501(c)(3).
So that's our story. And here's us with our 3 of our 4 Outrun ALD shirts. I guess a good segue to hand over to Cassie.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you, Chris and Katie, for sharing your very inspirational story. We look forward to seeing your efforts in the future. So thanks again, guys. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, please type them in the chat because we want to make sure we get to those at the end. Our next panelists are from an organization called X Out ALD, and joining us today is Cassie Groh and Jamie McAnelly. I will now pass it over to you guys.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. I have a video that we put together kind of as a promotion early on that I'll play here in a minute, but let me see if I can make it bigger. How do I?
It's that bottom.
There we go.
Right.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
So I'm Jamie McAnelly, and I just wanted to share a little bit about myself and my story, and then we'll get into the more information about X Out ALD, but in our event that we had. But I live in Minnesota, and with my husband and my 3 boys. My 2 older boys have ALD, and we were diagnosed via newborn screen back in 2019 after my second son was born. It was not on the newborn screen when my oldest, he's 5 now, was born. So we would have never known about him had we not lived in Minnesota and had the newborn screen. So our lives would look a lot different if it weren't for that. So thank you to all the pioneers with the newborn screening. And then our 3rd son is a product of IVF. He is a perfect match for our older 2 boys, and he's 5 months old. So we have a busy household, 3 boys, but we feel very grateful for that. And like many people have shared in their stories, and I'll just go ahead and play this. A lot of people have shared that, you know, they were kind of in a dark place after they found out about the diagnosis. And it took me about a year to be able to come out of that and reach out to other families. And really what I wanted was that support group. And within us, a smaller support we started on Facebook, just Minnesota families initially. And then we got together and we shared our stories, and then we said we wanted to do something. The ALD Family Weekend as Nick Adler was saying earlier, we wanted to turn our anxiety into action. And so we decided, hey, it's the middle of a pandemic. Why not try for a virtual 5K? And I think the virtual aspect of it is really the silver lining, because that's what has opened the connections to all the families across the United States and the world. And so we started a nonprofit, X Out ALD, and with the help of Knockout ALD and the Pershke family really helping to get us going with it, it just took off. You know, sharing my story, sharing our stories, and the families out there on social media was really had a huge impact. And that's scary at first to put your information out there, but then your network and your support comes, and then we were just you know, overwhelmed with all of the support, and you know, we ended up raising over $130,000, and it's still counting. I mean, it's just incredible, the money that's been coming in, and it's because of all the people out there that are here today and ALD Connect as well. And so I was going to have Cassie talk a little bit about more of the details with how we shared on social media and share her story now. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. As Jamie said, I am Cassie, along with Jamie, I'm part of X Out ALD. My husband and Dan is also part of X Out ALD, and we have a 7-year-old son, Brock. I had family history, so Brock has been monitored from birth, and in January of 2019, he had a successful bone marrow transplant because he developed cerebral ALD, unfortunately, at the University of Minnesota. So that went fantastic. Brock is doing awesome. He's actually getting ready for swimming lessons right now as we speak. Because we had that family history, he doesn't really have any deficits right now. So we are so grateful for his health, and we always have been, and we know we are very fortunate. Dan and I always wanted to pay it forward somehow. Didn't really know how, but on Brock's 1-year anniversary transplant appointments, we visited Dr. Lund's lab, research lab. And we knew at that moment, like, okay, we just need to do something. And we started connecting with families in Minnesota, like Jamie. And like Jamie said, X Out ALD kind of blossomed from there. And we came up with the idea for a 5K. So I'm going to share my screen too, so we can start looking at some pictures. Everybody see that?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So we came up with a 5K. Didn't really know how to reach people, but we started using social media, really started trying to engage with families on Instagram and Facebook, and it worked. And we started the 5K in September. We used the platform Race Roster, and that was thanks to Julie Pershke, who really helped us mentor us through that whole process. And she's used that platform before, but we started teams, and we allowed people to share their stories through family spotlights, and we did some sponsor spotlights too. But it was a way for people to kind of connect with one another and just show support for each other. And people really took the initiative, as you can see, and did their own things across the United States and even in Canada, and had family-friendly events with customized gear and fun runs for kids, and family-friendly and COVID-friendly food setups. There was door prizes. So on that day, we got so many pictures and videos of people and our shirts. And they were sending it to us. We were posting that on our social media, and again, just really thankful to families like the Marino family who joined us and are doing amazing things. And we couldn't do this without the support of our community at all. And like the Adler said earlier, this is because of you guys. We didn't do much. It was just an idea and a bunch of parents that wanted to get together and do something. So thanks to ALD Connect for letting us share our story too. And we just want to connect more.
Thank you, Cassie and Jamie, so much for sharing your inspirational stories. Also very much looking forward to what you guys are going to do in the future here. And you should be really proud of the accomplishments you guys have already made. I guess I'll start by asking a question, and feel free, whoever would like to answer on the panel. But what advice would you guys give to someone who is kind of just starting out and maybe just received a diagnosis? They have that feeling of anxiety. They want to turn it into action, but they just don't really know, where to start, and they want to raise money in their community. What kind of advice would you give to somebody like that? And feel free, whoever would like to take it. Does anyone want to start?
I will say that's a very interesting question, Greg, because in attending, last year's conference, this year's conference, the overriding theme seems to be that period of darkness. And I'll put in a plug for the peer-to-peer mentorship program that was started, of which Kate and I have been honored to be take part in, because as people on the panel, and I'm sure many folks that are listening and on the call can attest, that is probably the darkest period. Once you emerge from that, I think it's, for us anyways, it was never a question of where we wanted the money to go. We always knew we wanted to direct it to Dr. Eichler and the work that him and his team are doing. But it was how do we do that? And I think we're still learning. I mean, we learned so much through the process. I mean, obviously the pandemic and changed that. We had to completely shift gears, just like, Nick, the Adler family had to do with the camping weekend. I mean, we had to completely shift our focus. Ended up being a good thing, but, it wasn't what we originally envisioned. So I would say just taking that first step, whatever that might be, figuring out who or what you want the money to go to, and then take action, reach out to people, reach out to us. I mean, we're all here together. I mean, again, that's the big thing, is we're all in this together. And I think we would all sort of be lost without each other. And speaking, for myself and for Katie, I think that's really the big thing, is the community. So feel free to reach out. That's what I would say.
And I would add to that, is to look around at your network, not just, monetary donations, right? It's like, do you have a friend who can help you with some of the paperwork for the application? I mean, we were fortunate to have one of our board members had a family member who was a lawyer, and then Cassie's husband is good with numbers, and so just bringing all that together, especially like with the social media, and just kind of figuring out how to navigate through that, is a big part of it. And I think the virtual aspect of it will always be, and I hope it, I know I said this before, but the silver linings of this pandemic, I mean, we really are, when we met in May, it was right at the height of it, and we just didn't know we were going to have a virtual event or not. And I'm so grateful we did, because everyone was able to participate. And we mailed out hundreds of t-shirts, but it was the most rewarding thing to do. And in the midst of it, I had a baby, and then my son's had MRIs in July, but it was just like, it kept me going because I had that other purpose, and I knew that we were doing such good things. And yeah, reach out to people in your community. I would love to continue to grow together, not just what we have, and just And maybe we need to have a little panel, panel of grassroots fundraising, a community call or something to exchange ideas.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Jamie. We did get a question, and it's from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, are you planning another Outrun ALD 5K or marathon for 2021?
Yes, we're starting to work on that right now. Because the virtual portion of it was so successful, even if COVID isn't around in September, we're probably going to keep that portion. So yes, we are, and we're actually talking about that and already planning for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Cassie. If there's any other questions I missed, guys, feel free to type them in there. But if not, I'll go ahead and leave it to the group. If anyone has any last opening or closing remarks, I should say, anything they'd like to say, feel free to do it. I don't see any other questions here.
I'll just add on to what Jamie and Katie and Chris said too, is I know that time is really dark, like when you get that diagnosis, and I was very hesitant to even look into the community because I had that family history, so I know what ALD does. But they have become some of my biggest supporters, people we've reached out to, and I think just we went out to see the Smith family in the Boston area and went to Grady's fundraiser, and then the Pershkis. So just really connecting with all those families, and like Jamie said, just being a community. And I don't care where the money goes or what doctor it goes to, they're all working for the same cause. So I'll support. I know XL, we're willing to support whatever we can too.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Cassie. There are some people that were hoping to get your guys' contact information. They wanted to see if you'd be willing to discuss any info or experiences you guys have experienced. So I'll leave that up to you. I'm sure our organizers probably will have your contact info there, but that was one of our questions. I'm getting a lot of questions now. Are there any Canadian events? That's a great question. Anyone know of any Canadian events? Canadian fundraisers?
I think
not personally.
Miranda Weiss, I think, has done a lot of fundraising. So up there, I know she was, I think she's doing shirts. She's got a lot of stuff going on there. So Miranda Weiss, if you're out there, connect with somebody.
And then we have a question from Connie Atkins. We are in that new diagnosis and dark place. We want to turn our fear into actions. We are in Alabama. Any families in Alabama? And Connie.
Oh, Greg, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Obviously, we are not in Alabama, but if they want to connect with Katie and I, they're certainly welcome to. If they want to leave their email or something, or I'm happy to give mine out. There's no reason that person should feel alone right now, especially on this call with all these people. So please, feel free to reach out to Katie and I, and we'll do whatever we can. We can help arrange an event there or something. Shoot, I'll go run out there. I don't care.
ALD Connect also has the peer mentorship program, which is another great way to start connecting with families that are also experiencing similar situation.
Yeah, that's a great point, Katie. Connie, if you reach out to our executive director, Kelly, I'm sure she'd be happy to point you in the right direction and get you connected with families in Alabama and hopefully at least in the South. And thank you guys for posting your contact info. Again, if you want to do that, to our panelists, feel free to put it in there. But it is now 12:55, which means we are at time. But thank you guys so very much for sharing your heartfelt stories. You are so inspiring to the entire ALD Connect community, and I hope we continue to inspire more people to follow in your footsteps. So thank you guys again.